Hey guys, it's Theia and welcome back to the In the Garden of the Goddess secret member space. And for our guided tarot video this month, I've been pretty much, I was told, I was instructed to make this through various facets. I was very much told that no, this is what we're going to do this month. So this month we are going to dive into the Hellenic Oracle deck, and specifically I'm going to give you resources as well as basically a how to use kind of tutorial video. And it sounds instructional. It's really not. It's very open-ended. It puts the power in your hands, but it's just a bit of a guide as to best practice and ways to get the most out of the energies within this deck. So this is going to be Hellenic Oracle 101 for those of you looking for that information, want to get to know a little bit more about the creation of the deck, the intention behind it, and kind of everything about it. It's really information soup is what this video is going to be. I hope you like soup. But it's going to be how to connect with the deck, how to tap into the energies within the deck, use them in your life, how you can read the cards, other ways you can use the deck. It's Hellenic Oracle 101, but also a bit of a masterclass actually. But anyway, so I'm not gonna ramble too long in the intro because the video is long enough as it is. But I will say, if you're one who has it or if you've been interested in it, this is going to be a very handy and useful video to clarify some things and just kind of give some context and fun ways to use it if you want. So that being said, get our tarot pants on and get into the magic that is the Hellenic Oracle deck. Hey guys, it's Theia. How's it going? Welcome to the In the Garden of the Goddess secret member space. And today for our personal practice guided tarot reading type of video, I wanted to specifically go into connecting with the Hellenic Oracle. Because I know a lot of you guys have it. I get questions up and down forever and always about how to use it, what books to read with it, because there is no guidebook. You know, naturally, individuals are going to want to know what to use as a guidebook, and I think I'm just going to compile as much of the information here in this video for you as possible, leave it here as access, and those that are looking for it can find it. The Hellenic Oracle, for those that may or may not be familiar, is a deck I created with the intent of personally connecting with the deities of Greek mythology, the Greek pantheon, and immersing myself in the world that is that which is created through myth of a Greek origin. This is my main copy. This is the original copy. This was my prototype copy. It's the first one that ever existed. Right here, and this is the one that I have deeply bonded with. Oh, when did it's about 2 years old at this point. I made this about 2 years ago, in a very deep and intense period of time. It did not take me very long, but that's just because I worked on it like dawn till dusk for about 2 weeks straight. It was one of those acts of passion. I literally couldn't stop doing it. It needed to come out of me, and it would not let me rest until it did. So this is the version that is that. So not only does it cover your basic Olympian gods, it also contains titans as well as primordial gods, those original really animistic entities that are just really beautiful expressions of the energy of the land and the world and the universe around us. And I really wanted to capture those energies in this deck. Ultimately, the root of the creation of this deck was an animist perspective, a really earth-focused look at the way the energies of the earth are expressed and how to be able to read those energies, and then with the lens of Greek mythology thrown on top of it. And as I've mentioned before, I had no intention of selling this deck when I first made it. It was something I wanted to exist that did not exist in a way that I was happy with, so I just thought, hey, I'll just make it myself. Easy enough, you know? And thus the Hellenic Oracle was born. So in a way, it's a mythology deck, but honestly, for me, it's more than just a mythology deck. It's a really animistic look at the forces of deity that express themselves in our world. Is what it is. It's less about their stories, and it's more about the energy that deity themselves embodies, right? So I think of deities as they're beings, right? We're getting right into the nitty-gritty of how I personally experience deity. They are beings. They exist in the world. They have always existed in the world as we know it and as it was, and they express themselves in various ways. They mold and change over time. They are experienced differently to each individual, and the way that we relate to them grows and changes with our culture and the lens of time through which we see them, right? But in working with them, we keep them alive, right? It's the whole part of the mortal deity relationship, is that in working with them, venerating them, recognizing them, celebrating them, we keep them alive in whatever form they exist in, right? So that's why deity appears to everybody differently and in different ways and in different times. And really, it's an internal experience, much like all of the work we do and the card work we do. It's a very internal experience. It's very difficult to translate externally, but I'll do my best here. And in making a deck like this, it was a way to help me translate the internal experience of working with these deities and seeing them in the world. But it's not going to be 100% reflection, right? So anyway, this video I want to go into a little bit about how to work with the deck, some resources that you can use if you feel absolutely like if you don't know where to start, if you feel like you're going in blind. I'll give you some resources where you can start, but honestly the best possible thing you can do is slowly take your time, not necessarily learn every iota of their myth, but get to a point where you have that feeling inside you that you know them, you know what they are, who they are. It's like when you're meeting a person, right? When you first meet them, you know nothing about them other than perhaps what version of themselves they've shown you in this moment of meeting. But over time, as you recognize them, you get to know them, cross their paths often enough, you get to learn more and more about them, and then each little morsel of that information kind of goes into the bank of your heart and your soul, so that when you recognize those feelings and those energies in the world, you'll know it's them. So it's a learning process. It doesn't happen overnight. You can't just read a book and be like, boom, I know everything about all of the deities. You can know the myths, which is fine, but I feel like working with deities is so much more than just reading a myth about them. You really have to experience them as individuals, expressions of their own unique energies, and figure out the best way to kind of work with those in your life, work around them, work beside them, alongside them. And it is an act of reverence and devotion to bring these beings into the light. So that's what we're gonna do today. So it should be fun. I'll also go into a little bit of detail with the expanded one, the big boy, but I don't know, for the sake of specialness, we're gonna use my main one today, and I'll show you a little bit about how I use it, how I read with it specifically when I'm working with just it. The way I use this deck, it's not so much a history lesson or a regurgitation of the myth when I'm reading. There's a message there, and the way the cards kind of string themselves together to form a story based on the essences of each of the deities is how the message comes out, and that's how I use it. So we're gonna go into that a little bit today. I hope that'll be fun and all right. There's little tidbits about each of the gods. I will add them, but that's the game plan, and I'm looking forward to it. First off, though, before we even get into the deck itself and connecting with it, I find it really helpful, incredibly helpful, to be in a head space, a heart space, like head, heart, soul space, basically, entirely in a space where you're ready to immerse yourself in the world of that is the Hellenic Oracle deck, like the world of mythology, basically. So I kind of, it's like a Mind Palace thing, right? It's inner temple, so to speak, right? Mind Palace, inner temple, kind of same thing. For me, always has been. When I'm working with the Hellenic Oracle and whatever decks I choose to bring in alongside it, I am going to this place, and it's a framework for experience. It's a framework for internal experience. So it can have a literal landscape. It can look like mountains and rolling hills. It can feel like the warm breeze off the sea. However you personally experience this. I can't tell you what your internal landscape, your inner temple looks like. This is entirely you. You are the architect of your inner temple. You build it how you want, and just know that that is the kind of place you want to go to when you're working with a deck like this to really, really connect. For me personally, I have a lot of tokens from actual Greece that I bring in. I make present to kind of amplify the transportational aspects of this inner journey to one's inner temple. I also like to add ambient music. We talked about this a little bit in the Discord as well. It just immerses you in this setting. Just quiet ambient music in the background, non-distracting, just to set the tone. So I'll link a couple in the down bar of ones I like specifically for working with the Hellenic Oracle. You know, just note that they're a way to help immerse you in this version, this place that you're going. It can be temple music, it can be countryside music. What you can do also, if you're having a hard time getting into that space, you feel like you just can't connect to it, if there's a film, like if you've got the time and it's something you really want to take your time doing, watch a couple of films that are Greek mythology themed, no matter how ridiculous they are. Every little shred of that connection that you can form is going to help you in interpreting these cards. Every little association, every little morsel of experience and feeling. You know when you watch something and it sparks that connection of feeling, that intense drive to, I don't know, it's like your insides are glowing when you've started to make those connections. So when you start to make those connections and put them together, it'll help get you in that space, and then you can more easily later on jump into that internal space, that soul space, that inner temple for yourself later on down the line. So it's like everything spiritually, it's a practice. You've got to get good at getting yourself to the place. There could be a specific scent that sends you as well. That's important. For me, neroli will do it. Cypress as well is another one. Olives, believe it or not. Lemons, like strong scents will take me right to the place I need to be. Old wine as well, not new wine, has to be old wine. That's a bit off. So that mixed with a bit of neroli, lemon, like boom, I'm in Greece, you know? Like it's, have your own, all of your own personal associations, whatever works for you to take you to that place that are basically little doorways into this inner temple are going to be immensely helpful. And then setting up your space also. So having a little token, clearing the space. Oh, it's gonna get really dark, by the way. A thunderstorm, oh my god, really? Love that. There's a thunderstorm rolling in. Wow. Sorry, I'm just lighting a little hunk of Palo Santo. So just clearing the space, making the space open and available, and in a place where you're not distracted by other things. You're really immersing yourself in the place that you're going. It's a journey, really. So I'm gonna clear the space. I also, this is wild sage from the mountains of Crete, and I often, you know, relatively easy to source. It's finding tokens and items that are available to you in your world that you can use, and like, they don't have to be expensive. They don't have to be big fancy tools, gazillion dollar, you know, beads or whatever. You can just, you know, here's some sage. This is the plant that just grows in the mountains, and you burn some and it helps transport to the place where you're ready to really immerse yourself in the world that you're going to, and in this case the world of the Hellenic Oracle. So those are lots of little tips about getting yourself sort of sorted and ready. I've got my Mediterranean sea salt spray, again, dead easy to make. Mediterranean sea salt, sun water, and then splash a neroli. Spray a bit of that around, and again, scent is one of those extremely transportive things that can really just put you in the place where you're ready to experience things. So some other things I've got here: my labyrinth coin, lots of Nazars. These stones are from 2 different beaches. The first time I went to Skopelos, so we have Panormus and Staphylos Beach, one from each side of the island, and they're there. They're my 2 pillars, my white and my black. So they're, you know, a good way to transport, just a token, a little something to pull you in. All right, so we've got that all going. Right now it's raining so much. Oh my gosh, you can probably hear it, but that's all right. It'll be fine. We got some mood lighting. It'll be fun. So we've got our scent transporting us. The smoke is clearing. We are entering our inner temple, our mind palace, our inner temple. It can be a temple. It can just be like an open field. It can be the landscape. It can be a house somewhere. It's whatever you want. Wherever your heart wants to go, you go there. And that is the first place to kind of take ourselves to when we're exploring the Hellenic Oracle. And we've got our music playing. We can pretend. Copyright reasons we can't play it actually, but some nice lyra music playing, the sound of people milling about in Athens, you know, that kind of thing. Wherever you're setting you want to go, if you want to go rural, you want to go urban, however you want to go. And then, so once you've got yourself thoroughly situated, ready to connect with the deck, we can get started. I had to take a break. This is too rainy and noisy. Trying to make some calendula flower essence, but it's gonna be full of rainwater now. Give it a few minutes, see if she lets up. It seems to have let up a little bit. At least stopped making so much noise. There will be a bit of thunder and lightning in the background though, I hope you don't mind. So, okay, we've got ourselves in a space where we're ready to connect, and the weather is even cooperating. I love that. Zeus says hi, by the way. Alright, so we're going in blind. We know nothing. Say this is our first time with it. We've gone out of our way to get our inner temple sort of decorated the way we want. Our preconceived ideas about Greek mythology, don't discount those. How you feel about it, what you visualize in your mind's eye, what it's like, start from there. You have to start somewhere. What you already know is valuable, right? High Priestess, your inner knowing. Don't just discount it. So from there, my best advice is, instead of going, some of you are amazing and have literally made actual guidebooks and like written out the myths in their wonderful forms, and that's incredible. But I think even just working with them on a keyword basis to start is going to be infinitely helpful and the most useful. So things like Oria, if you have no idea what that is, a quick Google will find out that is the god of mountains, right? Also, I've mentioned many times, the best resource for these quick little keyword meanings, as well as a brief rundown of the myth itself, is the Theia website. I will put it on the screen and link it down below. Every one of the cards in this deck, not necessarily the expansion, but the original one anyway, and the core setup of the deck, they're all in there, and they're an easy Google whenever you need. If you're doing a reading, you just need a quick refresher, about the myth and the Coles Notes version of each of the gods, then that's a great jumping off point, and honestly is probably the best resource I could probably recommend. It's also free and widely available to everybody. Most accessible, information's out there. The internet is full of information, but more importantly than, you know, a specific resource, like a historical resource, is going to be your personal feeling about that card. Okay? I cannot stress this enough. No matter what a book says, if you feel like a deity means this to you, then it does. If you feel like this certain animistic entity means something to you, then it does. It means that it's... But you're welcome to take on all of the other meanings from your research as well. So, for example, this is Oria. This is mountains. So you do a quick look, you go in Theoi and find out that this is the primordial god that represents all mountains. Another fun, handy thing about this is the Greek word for mountain is oros, so it's all tied together. And a lot of the like Hades, the underworld, the name of the underworld is Hades in Greek. So harmonia, harmony, like so many of the word for God in Greek is Theos, Zeus. So it even in modern Greek language, these deities, these entities, these words, these titles persist, which is beautiful and quite fun. But anyway, I'm getting tangent, I'm getting derailed. We got mountains here, mountain. So you can look at the card and get your usual intuitive hits like you would from looking at any other oracle card. Now knowing that it means Oria. And again, go through the card, write a list of keywords for each of them. Won't take very long, and that will serve you greatly if you're going in blind and don't know anything. You can read the article on the encyclopedia website that I mentioned, and you can also just tap into what the concept of mountains means to you. Being a very animistic deck, it kind of applies everywhere. It doesn't just specifically designate the locale of the landscape of Greece, right? A mountain anywhere. This could be a mountain anywhere. It can take you specifically to a Greek mountain if you want to, but it can apply to anything. So when you're reading this card, it comes up in a reading, it means mountains. Mountains are symbols of a challenge, a journey. One's, you know, magnum opus, the holy mountain, scaling a mountain, going in and or around a mountain. You know, high places, peaks, objects of reverence, the place where the gods live. Like there is a Mount Olympus card in the other deck, but not in this one. But it's the concept of a giant obstacle in your way, but also protection, the way mountains shape the landscape, shape the weather. You can tap into any of these aspects. Whatever comes to you in a reading is there, and it's all available to you. There's no set specific meaning for the card, right? That's the main thesis of this video, is that there's no set specific meaning for any of these cards. Like, I could never write a guidebook because there just isn't one. The guidebook for this deck is life, much like tarot. But it's the meaning will come to you when it's in the context of a reading, and that's the meaning you were supposed to always get, and how to go forward. So got Zeus here hanging out as the thunder rolls in the background. I love that. And again, king of the gods, you know, specifically what, without reading anything, ahead of what you get from the card, knowing that most people, as they do know, that Zeus was the ruler of Mount Olympus and in charge, pulled the good straw, battled the battles, slayed his father, kind of stuff. So Thanatos over here is the god of death, so again, very similar to what perhaps the death card in the tarot would be like, but maybe a soft... It's actually very equal energy. Thanatos and the death card, very similar for me, actually. Speaking of which, Zeus is Jupiter. Another thing that you can bring in specifically when working with the Olympians in this deck, here's Apollo also. They're celestial components, so once they swapped to their Roman counterparts, the Romans immortalized them in the sky by naming the planets after them. So immortalized, they were already immortal, but you know what I mean, like they're in the sky. Jupiter just conjuncted with the sun as well. Anywho, so whenever Zeus comes up, you can think of like astrological associations for Jupiter all apply here. Apollo, the sun, all of those apply here. Thanatos, death. You can pull in the tarot meanings, right? The death card, sun card, the Wheel of Fortune. Like, they're all there. All that information is there, access here. You just kind of got to learn your associations, and then you're good to go. So I tend to use that a lot also, and they go back and forth. So when I pull the Wheel of Fortune card in a tarot deck, I think of Jupiter, and I also think of Zeus. So it's all connected. Everything is connected. That's why it's so incredibly and infinitely useful. Hamadryads here being tree spirits. Harmony, the wife of Cadmus, one of the progenitors of humans and human civilization in general. Hades, the underworld itself, as well as the god of the underworld, that he who rules what goes on below, and his little puppy Cerberus. And he's Pluto. His Roman name is Pluto, so the planet Pluto. All of the attributes for Pluto apply here as well, and so on and so forth. Every interaction you've ever had with any of these deities, and like including the ridiculous Disney movie that isn't historically accurate, right? It's myth. Myth grows and changes. It's how you see it. And honestly, at this point, that movie is so iconic in its own ridiculous way that in some way the inaccuracies have actually become accurate, because myth is fluid. Myth is malleable. It changes based. It's like a game of telephone, right? But that doesn't it doesn't make it not real, right? Like, it's, I don't know, how do I describe this perspective? But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that any interaction you have with any of these concepts, deities, ideas, any interpretations from any literature you've read, fiction you've read, anytime you've come across that energy in your life is valid and is perfectly good information to internalize in the context of using their energies in readings, which is what the deck is for, right? So yes, children's shows about the Greek gods, advertising campaigns, like, you know, anywhere that you get information about them, you build on your internal relationship to those deities and, you know, use it that way. Adonis here, curse of beauty. Atlas, burden. The Titan who was relegated to carrying the earth on his shoulders, but he's also a pillar of strength, a foundation for something great, but also, you know, massive suffering. It was a punishment after all. So every little bit that you can pick up. There's Ornos here, Uranus, Sky Daddy. You pull in your astrological associations there. So even going in blind, you're not going in blind, because at some point you have interacted with little tastes, little wisps of these beings and concepts, because we are a Western culture. Those of us in the West are a Western culture, and these stories are woven into all of the media we've ever consumed in our life, all of the books we've ever read. Traditions, customs, our language and words, there's bits and pieces of all of these figures in our lives, and being able to find those and then associate them with the card so that when the card comes up, you can use that information in reading is ultimately what you want to do. They're all there. Pontus, the sea, like some faster and bigger than others, but really everything contains multitudes. There's an infinite and never-ending amount of information that you can get from any of the cards. And that's why the readings that I get for them tend to be so incredibly intense and poignant and very, very useful. So that's kind of, if I were going in blind, I would assure you incredibly that you're not as blind as you think you are. You know way more about mythology than you think you do. It's just going to be a case of taking the information that's already in your brain and tying it together and realizing that you know it already. You do know it. You have inner knowing. You grew up in a Western culture, I'm assuming, and part of everything you've ever learned is based in a lot of these myths. So in introducing yourselves to the myths via learning about them slowly instead of trying to like binge on them is going to be the best way to interact with the energies. References wise, specifically if you want to do a little bit more of a scholarly, in-depth look at the deities, you can go for the source material. This is, I would recommend that if you're looking for a more scholarly approach to it. So things like this book, Hesiod and Theogony, this is basically the genesis of the world of Greek mythology. This is the creation myth. So it has where the gods came from, kind of their family line, and all that jazz. It's not like a super easy and fluffy read, but the information is in there and you can use it as needed. But this is a handy one. The Odyssey and the Iliad, I have a fancy copy of both of them. This is just the Iliad. These are more about the heroes and the gods' interaction with them in the Iliad specifically is the Trojan War, and the Odyssey is Homer talking about Odysseus's trek back from the Trojan War, which took like 10 years, so it's a big story. So these would be more useful for the expansion pack and the myths involving heroes specifically. If you're looking for like hero's journey type stuff, then that would be the way to go. I don't have the hard copies with me of the classic plays, but any of the Greek classic plays like Euripides, Sophocles, Aristophanes, any of those authors' renditions of mythology in the classical Greek context, again, not the easiest to read ever, and they're all translations, so to keep that with a grain of salt, because they have originally been written in Greek, like ancient Greek. But they're there if you want a little bit more of specifically historical context of the way the gods interacted in daily life and the stories that way. Medea, Antigone, the frogs in other plays, Oedipus Rex, like all of those are immortalized in classic Greek dramas. So you can read those if you want to get to know that aspect of Greek mythology. For source material for the first deck, which is the deity specific one, if you're just working with deity energy, Theogony is probably my biggest recommended. Like it's not big, not huge. You can also read about the Orphic hymns if you want to work with chthonic gods that way, and the Orphic tradition, but remember it is a little bit different. It goes its own way for a couple of different things. In a modern context, if you want something a little bit more modern rendition that's a little bit more palatable to our 20th century brains, 21st century brains, the Madeline Miller books are great. Achilles, Circe, they really flesh out the deities in a fun, not like crazy fun, but in a good way. Not everything landed for me, but that's not to say it won't for you. So Achilles would probably be more Trojan War based. Achilles' relationship with Patroclus and all of the other stuff around him, but Circe is really quite good. There's a lot of deities that show up in her story, and it's wonderful. There's a bunch. There's a Medusa one, there's a Persephone one. Like all sorts of modern fiction is being written, rewriting these Greek myths, which is great. And just because they're not the same, like for example, they might be subverting the sort of patriarchal masculine rapiness of the, I say original, but like these myths have transformed over time, so that have come through the past to us, the recent patriarchal past to us. They're being kind of scrubbed clean of that a little bit, but the stories are still just as valid, and take with it what you resonate with is mostly what I'm saying. So they're perfectly valid and very good, and have at her. Same with film. Take as much as you want film wise from what you see, and use it to learn that way. And it's about forming your own relationships and connections, and it doesn't have to be with all of them. Like you can pick and choose. There can be a couple that you go really deep with, and some you only learn the keyword for, and that's perfectly fine. Like you may want to know a whole bunch about the hours, the seasons, and that can be like if you've got a very cyclical witchy practice and you're very like seasonally getting to know these specific deities and honoring them and venerating them, you can spend your whole life doing that and then know nothing about Eos other than that she is the dawn. Like that's perfectly valid also. You don't need to know everything about every single one of them. You never will, because the amount of information about them never ends. It's a bottomless bucket. It's a Mary Poppins handbag of of inevitable everythingness, right? Like each one of these is a portal into a specific deity energy, and you can get as much or as little out of each of them as you want. There's no rules. Go to town. Oh, what were some other resources? I really like, personally me, because I have a thing for old British men. I really like Stephen Fry's Mythos and Heroes. The audiobooks are amazing, so easy to read, so easy to listen to, and just a great way to familiarize yourself on not so much of a formal level with the deities. So again, highly recommend that. All of these I will do my best to link in the down bar. But yeah, anywhere you come across things that remind you of the beings in this deck is a perfectly valid resource for getting to know them. So, and if you're feeling wild and crazy, hop on a plane and go to Greece. Feel what it's like to be there. Experience the spirit of place itself. And if you can't do that, which, to be real, I can't do that all the time. I'd love to, but I can't. Having the little tokens from the place itself is like a taste, like a tidbit, a way to help experience those, and paying really close attention to how those things make you feel as you're experiencing them, like with the sage, the stones, the salt, and that sort of thing. Noticing the differences and building that internal temple through your heart with these objects is, you know, a way to really hunker down and connect with the energies present in this deck. So with that being said, I think that's all good in the resource department. Basically my advice is, what best resource is literally any resource. And if you're looking for like a quick, just a keywordy what's going on, use the free encyclopedia that's linked in like every video ever. So moving into, okay, so now I've got a rough idea of who is on every one of these cards. How the heck do I use it? How do I do a reading with this? You don't even have to ever do readings with this. You can use them as altar cards. You can use them as magical objects to charge ritual and spell and amplify whatever it is you're trying to do. Anyway, it's a witchy object. Everything's a witchy object if you want it to be, right? So if you're choosing to make this a witchy object, then use it as you would. There's no rules. Do whatever you want with this deck. I do not mind. It is yours now if you have it. So, you know, go to town. So like I said, like I use it for amplifying flower essences. When I'm doing spell work, which isn't very often, I use it. I'll pull cards out if there's a particular energy I want to focus on or bring into my life a little bit more, get to know a little bit more. For example, like I had a Athena out for a little while when I was working on some backbone related stuff. Like if I'm doing any journeying to the underworld, I'll pull out Hades and Persephone just to have them, you know, there with me, and as a little bit of an anchor point in that regard. You can use it for anything, for whatever. But if you want to use it purely for divination, we're going to do a little bit of a example of how I would use it in a divinatory, a very general divinatory way. And you can see sort of the style with which I read the energies of the Greek gods as an oracle, right? So oracles existed in ancient Greece. Temples would have oracles. Most famously, the temple at Delphi. Inside the adytum, there was a Pythia. Some say that she sat above a fissure in Mount Parnassus where sulfuric gases escaped and got them high, and that's where their visions came from. But it's also been sort of, not really debunked, but that's not entirely true that, you know, there was, I don't know, they recreated the scenario and it didn't do the thing. So they were just, personally I believe, they were just filled with the word of the gods and offered prophecy in of their own right. They didn't necessarily need to be high to have done it, but I've been to Delphi, actually. Put my hand on the Omphalos, the navel of the universe, and it was a pretty awesome experience. I need to go back. But specifically, they didn't. What I'm trying to say here is, of course, they didn't use cards. They prophesized without the use of of tools. So so this would be a bit different for them, but it's a way to keep the tradition alive. And I do feel a lot like the cards are just a jumping off point. The messages do come through and come out, and you just gotta learn how to kind of pay attention to them and see. So let's pull some cards and we'll see what comes out. So traditionally, if I'm just doing a general whatever, see what's going on kind of reading with this, I'll pull 3. I always start with 3. 3 is a good number, and we like it. So initially, you can do your intuitive, picking up on the colors, directions, all of that stuff, you know, go ham. But specifically, we've got Ares, Tartarus, Themis. Ares, Roman god Mars, god of war. He's my lovely little young version as well, which I enjoy. So aggression, forward movement, progress, force, progress by force. Tartarus here, the bowels of the underworld, the lower layers of Hades, the prison for the most evil of things. Not even most evil, but sort of a containment space for that which we want to lock away. So it can be a symbol of one's subconscious, or unconscious even, all the way down there. The unconscious, what goes on that you do not want to know about, and that sort of thing. And then Themis, who is our justice card, our divine justice, you know, karma. So basically we've got the justice card, the tower card, so Ares is funny actually. Ares is 2 for me. Ares is in his Mars form. So Mars and Ares are kind of, in my head, one of the only deities that's like super separate when you go to the Roman. So Ares in the Greek pantheon for me is a lot different than Ares in the Roman, or than Mars in the Roman pantheon. Like they're corresponding, but they do kind of diverge more than others would. Mars is more burly, war focused. In my brain, he always has a giant mustache. Right? And he's the tower card in the tarot, right? He is the destruction aspect of war. Whereas Ares is more like the zodiac sign Aries, who is more strategic warfare, the Emperor card. So as opposed to being the tower, he's the Emperor, like in the Greek pantheon. But that being said, though, those Martian, the tower-like energies are still in here, but for me, they're just not as surface level as his Emperor card qualities. So his relationship with Aphrodite is also very prominent when he comes up. For me, it's always there. It's always a footnote in his story, because that is big and important for me. The coming together of opposites, the union, the duality coming together and finding harmony and balance that way. So that's always a part of the story when it comes up, when I see Ares as well. But again, it's just a reminder also that strategic warfare, that aggressive competition comes in all forms, right? Unassuming form. Like, it's not everything is going to be very obvious that it's out to get you. Anywho, Tartarus over here is very fiery. So far we've got lots of, again, I'm pulling in my elemental associations as well, because that's how I read, right? So you're gonna use your associations. So if you've got zodiac associations, use them. If you've got elemental associations, use them. Whatever associations you've got, pull them out, throw them on the table, and use them. That's what reading cards is. It's taking your, you know, internal coffer of information about the themes and symbols and topics and stories and plunking them on the table and using them in a divinatory context. So Ares, strategic warfare. Tartarus, the unconscious, what's going on that you don't know about, which again, in relation to, we were mentioning Ares not necessarily being an obvious threat, but he actually is. And then Themis, divine justice. For me, if I was reading this for me, just kind of off at the moment, casually, I would just caution of an injustice coming from someone you don't expect. A little predictive-y, but here you go. So that's just initially how I would read those cards. I could build on it if I want, throw a couple extra. Well, I'm like, who is this person that I don't expect? And then you pull a card and it says Demeter, and then you'd go, oh my gosh, it's a mother figure, it's someone who provides, or it could be someone in an agricultural field, like, you know, use it in that regard. So we know that Demeter, mother of Persephone, is the goddess of harvest, of grain, and basically you have to ask a question to get an answer. That's how card work works, right? Usually, if you're just generally asking a general question, you get kind of a general answer, and then you can specify from there. We've narrowed our focus. We asked specifically, you know, who is this person that I don't know? Pull a card. We got Demeter, so, you know, a provider, or the place where your abundance comes from might be caused into question for some reason. That's where the injustice is going to happen. So, you know, keep an eye on where your material abundance comes from. And then, is there anything I can do about this injustice? And we've got Pythia, so definitely, she's very much exactly like a high priestess card. You know, tap into your own inner knowing, and you know what to do already. You know what to do already, and then, again, a mountain. There's going to be a struggle. Something will need to be climbed. Something will need to be overcome. Something will need to be scaled and gotten through. Or it might also be a giant physical barrier as well. You might just have to, you know, stop and redirect, go a different direction, and so on and so forth. So that's how I would read with these cards as a rule. And again, it's really just playing on what you already know and everything you already know. So taking the time to really immerse yourself, like physically, not just in your mind by reading, but with scent and sound and smell and taste and, you know, every possible way that you can immerse yourself in this world to have those messages come through you more easily is going to be beneficial for you when reading with these. Oh my goodness, I hope that's been helpful. I've been talking for a long time. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to touch on specifically about them. Connecting with the physical deck itself is also important. Like, you know, your traditional old-fashioned tarot readers will say, sleep with the deck, put it on your nightstand, shove it in your pillowcase, anoint it with an oil or a water of your choice. Like, you know, do what you would with the deck to get to know it in all ways. Even something as simple as just holding it in your hands, shuffling it, flipping through the pictures. You know, it's about forming a bond and relationship with the deck as much as it is forming bonds and relationships with each of the deities themselves, and then listening to them for the messages they have to say when you ask. So it's a bonding experience, and it takes time, and it's not going to happen overnight. And it's like, even after I made it, it took me some time to really get to know it and learn what it had to teach me. And, you know, once you've mastered it, you'll have a friend forever. It's you know, a trusted advisor, you know, something that, you know, you can tether your experience in this world to, a guide, a friend, a help. Heck, it could turn out to be an enemy too. Your relationship and your experience with this deck is going to be different than anybody else's, and everything is like that all the time anyway. But that's some ways that you can use it, and there's probably a million other ways that you can use the deck that I've never even thought of. Makes great bookmarks. You can do whatever. You can do spell work, as I said. Take it on adventure tarot. You can perfectly valid to never even read with it as an oracle. You can just use it as a study guide if you're looking for a scholarly approach. You can use it as, you know, reference for art history. You can use it for creativity and storytelling. So if, like, you're an author and you're writing a story and you need to kind of, you've hit a roadblock and don't know what your character should do, you can pull a couple of cards and be like, oh, which is, I'm pretty sure, exactly what all of the authors from history have done, because we're just repeating the same like 5 stories over and over and over again, right? Like the myths often don't change. Every story can kind of be boiled down to its essence, which a lot of the time lies within ancient mythologies, and Greek is not exempt from that. So, you know, so for example, if I were to write a story about these 3 cards, we've got the fates here, obviously, and dreams. So some guy dreams of a prophecy that he's going to die, and so he goes on a bender because he's seen how he's going to die, so now he knows that he can survive everything, and just, you know, goes crazy. And that's your story. There you go. That's those 3 with the fates and Morpheus, god of dreams, and the satyrs. So yeah, you can have at her, have fun. The door is wide open, possibilities are endless, and I wish you all the very best in working with them. So hopefully we'll go into a little bit more detail about some specific deities and some specific cards as time goes on. What I wanted to do this month was I was going to do a little, as we did with Athena last month, a deep dive into Heracles and the Nemean Lion, because, you know, it's Leo season and he's often on the Strength card, which is the Leo card in the tarot, and I was going to build it all together into this big thing, but I was hitting a really big block with it. He didn't want to, I don't know, something was like, nope, we're not talking about that today, there's something else you got to do. So this is what came first. So, and we get this kind of the fundamentals, Hellenic Oracle 101 out of the way. We can go into a little bit more detail later on, but specifically, what I gotta say is pick up as much information casually as you possibly can and just store it in your brain, store it in your heart. If something, and specifically, if that information resonates with you hard when it's coming in, when you feel it like buzzing, when it lights your brain on fire, when you're like, ooh, that's so good, save that information so that you can access it later, because that's the stuff you're looking for. That's the life juice. That's the whole reason we're doing this, is for those moments of connection and resonance and guidance and magic. That's what we're doing here. So yes. So I guess that'll be enough for me today. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it wholeheartedly. Any of you who have and love and use the deck, I'm just so happy and so proud to see it out in the world. It makes me so happy. And I just, you know, wish you all the best with it. And if you have any questions specifically about what we've talked about today, leave them in the down bar and I will happily leave you a 100-word essay about your question, because I can talk endlessly up and down for days about my experience with this deck. And we may revisit this all a little bit later if some more things come up and I have some more ideas about it, but I think basically that's kind of it. If you're looking for a reference, threw a couple links in the down bar, but the biggest reference is you and your experience in the world and getting to know how those myths are present in your life, and just starting off with keywords and like a rough idea of who each of them is, so that you can build on that relationship going forward, is the condensed version. That's the abstract of this video. So thank you again very much. I really appreciate it, and I will see all you extra fine people in my next video.